declarations of interest. Are there any from members? Nope. There we are. Great. So we can move on to the main item on the agenda this morning, which is the Regional Transport Plan Implementation Plan, which is set out on pages 3 to 16 of the agenda. And clearly it's seeking our approval as a subcommittee for the implementation plan to be submitted to the main CJC before being submitted to Welsh Government formally for approval. You'll find the RTP implementation plan is attached as an appendix, and I'll ask officers just to take us through that this morning in some detail. So, Stuart, I'm assuming that you were leading on this, or am I wrong?
Yeah, that's fine. I don't know, Mark, do you want to introduce anything, or are you happy for me just to go through?
No, I'm happy, Stuart. Thank you. If you're happy to take members through this paper.
Okay, I'll try and share. Okay, can you all see that now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. I won't go through in great detail, but so we've there's a duty on us in terms of for the CJC to prepare a regional transport plan, and the first stage of that is for us to prepare an implementation plan for submission to Welsh Government by the end of October. So this is the sort of implementation plan we've put together as a region to address the timescales and things put forward by Welsh Government on there. If I lead through just on the top, the introductory page, it sort of gives just a brief background to it in terms of the previous regional transport plan. We had a joint plan in terms of the last one being from 2015 to 20, and that's just basically continued on. So we're now at the stage where we've had the framework and the guidance through from Welsh Government. So this gives an indication of the framework that we're operating on for the transport plan itself. The main strand from there is the Llwybr Newydd, the Wales Transport Strategy, and then the other key elements of sort of policy framework in which we're operating are sort of listed down there. So that gives the overall sort of framework, a graphic of the sort of framework we're working on. There's two main elements to the preparation of the transport plan and submission date. So the first one is the first part is developing the case for change, and this piece of work it has to be submitted to Welsh Government by the 29th of February 2024. So some of the key elements of this one are the sort of stakeholder engagement, and defining the area of study obviously is quite straightforward. Setting out the strategic case, so that again is linking to all the policies and frameworks that are in place in which the transport plan's got to be put together. Identifying the issues and opportunities. So a lot of this in terms of is mapping out what's happening at the moment in terms of within from a transport point of view across the region. And looking at the sort of a lot of this will involve the transport modelling, which we've got fairly detailed information on, but it's gathering together to understand what's going on at the moment and what the potential opportunities are for improving things on there. And we've got the development of the sort of vision in terms of the current joint transport plan vision is noted down there. So the current one is to improve transport and access within and beyond the region to facilitate economic regeneration, reduce deprivation, support the development and the use of more sustainable and healthier modes of transport. So it will be to refresh and see whether that's still the overall vision. And then it'll be developing smart objectives in terms of for the regional transport plan, what key objectives we want in terms of as part of the wider plan. One of the key factors on there is the governance in terms of the sign-off, because the responsibility for the regional transport plan itself is obviously sits with the CJC, but in addition to that, we've got the I guess the added level of complexity in terms of needing the local authorities, obviously individual local authorities, to be comfortable as well, which and what political sign-off is needed as we take these matters forward for approval. And then development of a stakeholder management and public engagement plan, and this is quite a significant piece of work with the regional transport plan itself. A lot of the work is about that engagement with the communities and key stakeholders to shape the plan properly. So that's the first element. As I say, that's then due for submission in terms of early next year, back in say by the 29th of February. And then the next element, which starts pretty much after we've had sign off from Welsh Government from that, is the development of the regional transport plan itself, and that's for submission by the 29th of May 2024. So this is a very large sort of piece of work in terms of the needs to be carried out. Again, key factors in there is the identifying the sort of high level interventions which we want to put in place as part of the regional transport plan itself. Also carrying out a review of the previous transport plan, the joint transport plan, understanding what's been delivered, what hasn't been delivered and is no longer required, or what hasn't been delivered and sort of rolls on to the next regional transport plan. So the refresh in terms of on there. And then the development, the final draft itself for the regional transport plans to be submitted by the 31st of October. And then there's obviously approval times from Welsh Government about what we've submitted, with the final report itself being submitted on the 29th of March 2025. So those are the key strands that we're required to do. A lot of sort of, say, particularly with the requirements of the integrated and wellbeing assessments that we need to carry out. There's a lot of public consultation and stakeholder consultation to be developed through the different stages, all of which some quite challenging timescales really, and environmental impacts to be undertaken. So these are quite lengthy pieces of work, quite large pieces of work to be undertaken as part of the development of the final plan. I guess what I need to do is take you to the quite an important part, the risk identification in terms of on there. So in section 4 there, we've flagged up what the key risks are on this. So we've got the first one being the political agreement to the policies and the high level outcomes. So that's obviously, it's a regional plan, but it also needs to suit the local authorities, individual local authorities, to have joint agreement on that. And it's not just the agreement, but it's I guess the timescale and things for the approvals itself through the individual authorities. And then it goes on to the regional transport plan, the delivery plan, which will have a list of the sort of prioritised schemes. And this is, I guess, this is sort of quite challenging in the sense that coming up with a list of the delivery plan of schemes requires us to have an understanding of the level of sort of funding that's available to work that up. I suppose if I summarise and think of the last, when the transport plan was first, joint transport plan was first delivered, I think back in 2010, there was very much a wish that we were ambitious in terms of what we delivered, but I think very soon after that being delivered, there was a significant reduction in the level of funding. So we ended up with what then turned out to be a wish list, which a lot of it couldn't sort of be delivered. So the challenge we've got is that we haven't got an indication of the level of funding that's coming through. So therefore we can't shape the report in terms of the prioritised list of schemes to fit with that. So that's one. A key challenge is and this one here about the timescale for submission. This really is ambitious. I think the kind of fixed point of 2025 was first muted some time ago, but there's been a lot of delays in terms of coming through with the guidance, and that fixed point has not moved. So it is really ambitious to get something meaningful produced and delivered in that timescale. So that's very much a high risk. And then the resources itself, we've got, this is going to require a fair bit of funding in terms of on there. We've got very limited resources in each of the authorities, and obviously the ongoing work at the moment. there's going to have to be pieces of work commissioned, certainly from the consultation side, and the working up the plan itself, which will require funding, and there's no sort of clear a stream of funding in terms of on there. So that's something that certainly needs to be highlighted. So I think yeah, and the final one I've already covered in terms of the amount of funding for the delivery. So those are the key risks. I think it's important to flag up because there really are significant risks on some of these. So hopefully that's covered some of the key points. Back to yourself, Chair.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thanks, Stuart, for that. Yeah, it's great that we've got the implementation plan in front of us, but clearly, as Stuart mentioned, there are some significant risks for us to acknowledge and address. It might be worth having a wider discussion on that now. In terms of the content of the report that's in front of you, are there any comments or questions from members? Or are we quite content? If not, what I'll do is I think it'll be worth working through some of those risks in particular and trying to get some sort of resolution in terms of our response to them. So as Stuart mentioned, they're set out there in section 4, aren't they? So the first one, in terms of the political, that has to be acknowledged. And to be fair, I think we've seen progress on that front over recent months. So we had a leaders meeting in the National Botanical Gardens in Neath there, where we discussed actually the strategic aims, and challenges, particularly around rail, for example, where we've seen some tensions, historically, with regards to east-west flow, in particular, and reduction of journey times from Pembrokeshire and Carmarthenshire to Cardiff and onwards. And it's good to see that we've made progress on that front, I think, and we were able to find a resolution where all 4 leaders and 4 councils were able to sign up to. So I think that on that political level, I think there's reasons to be optimistic that we can find a place where every part of the region gets something out of it, and I think that's the fundamental point. It's this transport plan has to serve the needs of both urban and rural, because the needs are very different, and only over the past few weeks we've seen the impact that funding decisions can have on rural areas. We've seen the Booker bus service, which impacts on Pembrokeshire, Carmarthenshire and Ceredigion, being taken away. These have real impacts on some of our more rural communities. But so that hopefully is a position which is hardening. That political consensus, if you like, is something that is moving in the right direction. The timescales clearly is something that we need to address. The first protocol, as Stuart mentioned, is the setting out of our strategic case by the end of February, which in itself is going to be challenging. But when you look at the list of actions that are needed and the list of consultations and engagement that we need to get to a point of final sign-off in March 2025, well, it's going to be challenging. And from my perspective, I'm concerned about that because there are reasons for it to be flagged up as a risk. We've heard that there were delays in the system in terms of the guidance that's been provided by Welsh Government. So I think that we do need to have a conversation with Welsh Government around those timescales. My feeling is that it would probably be worth our while as a subcommittee to formally ask the CJC, when we're submitting the implementation plan, that we write separately to Welsh Government to say yes, we've put an implementation plan together, but actually we've got concerns around the timescales, and we would welcome a discussion with Welsh Government around those to see if there's any way that we can be flexible and realistic really in what we can do within the next year or two. I'm not sure what members' thoughts are on that in particular. Are you supportive? Do you see sense in it? Do you disagree? Would welcome any thoughts that you have in particular from your different counties. Edward, do you want to come in on that point?
Yeah, well, I agree, Chair, that the timescale is very, very tight. We've basically got 4 months, with the Christmas period as well, and of course the other challenge is the financial implications as well. So yes, it's very challenging timeline.
Yeah. I'm asking Cyril, Rhys in Pembrokeshire, Mike, generally content with that approach that we engage with Welsh Government on those timescales?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely crucial, Darren, really. You know, we've got processes to go through just to get executive sign off, and we'd need to check whether it needs to go through council. But what scares me more than anything else is the capacity issue to deliver on this, you know, from within existing resources. So I'm sure you'll come on to a case for greater resources for that to take place. But I just feel, and I don't want to speak on behalf of Darren, but you know, with the significant workload that Welsh Government policy has already put before us, with 20 mile being default being just one of those things, in terms of the strategic capacity to deliver on this within the time scale on top of the day job. I frankly think it's not doable without their additional support. So whatever you want to do as chair to highlight that as robustly as possible, actually, I'd be very supportive of a robust response back to Welsh Government on this. I would support. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Rhys. Just from Cyril and Mike, Neath, Talbot and Swansea, anything to add?
No, I just go along with Rhys's and Edward's line on it. So yeah, I'll back you all the way there.
There we are, great. And Mike, similarly in Neath, Talbot, happy with that? There seems to be an issue with sound, is it?
Councillor Hurley, they were just asking if we were happy with that approach in terms of writing to Welsh Government, setting out our concerns. I think it would be useful as well, perhaps Councillor Hurley, that we make reference to the amount of work that officers are drawn into with the changes in terms of bus review at the moment. And we're not out of the water there. We've got a lot to do before the end of the financial year. And obviously we'll be continuing to lobby through this process about the roads review as well. So some critical things that we need to highlight as well.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, so there we are. We've got agreement on the timescales, and we will certainly lobby on that front when we submit. Rhys touched on the resourcing, and that's two-pronged, I suppose. One is the resource in terms of actually developing the transport plan in the first instance, and the pressure that we currently face, you know, as council, as I say, with the work that we've got already. And the second element is the resourcing actually of the implementation itself. You know, how much capital are we looking at here? Because it does have an impact in terms of how we frame the plan and how we pull it together, particularly around the priorities, I think, you know, because we can talk about rail and we can talk about, you know, the bigger schemes, but it very much depends on the size of our envelope, doesn't it? Because as I mentioned, we've got some pretty short-term challenges in terms of day-to-day bus services, for example, which are challenging for us all. I'm just wondering, from an officer perspective, in terms of the resource, in terms of pulling the plan together, I know we've had about, was it 125,000 to support initially, and there's been talk of sort of Transport for Wales potentially supporting certain elements. I'm just wondering, Stuart, if you could just outline where we are on that in particular.
Yeah, we've been told that there is there was some funding set aside from the CJC itself towards this thing. This is the kind of, I guess, the front runner for the CJC policies coming out. So there's a level of funding sort of set aside for that. In addition, Welsh Government have sort of given a commitment that there'll be £125,000 to come from them towards in the current year towards it. We haven't seen it yet, and saying it feels a little bit like the checks in the post. But I think from a Welsh Government perspective, they have said once the implementation plan is in, the last we've heard, they will provide that funding. But very much the cost of developing this is going to go a fair bit beyond that. So So I think when that money comes through, it's a start point on there, but we do need some more resources, and we need some more funding to work something meaningful up. I think there's a risk that if the funding isn't there and the mandate is just to develop something within the timescale with very limited resources, we're going to end up with a very unambitious plan which doesn't set the stall out for the region. And so I think that there is a case of certainly pushing for more funding to develop things. So yes, it's limited funding so far been made available. There was mention of support from Transport for Wales to help with the development, but and we have got a sort of coordinating officer to help from provide a link with Welsh Government, but they don't have other support above and beyond that for helping with the delivery, as I understand. So so I think this is something that again needs a kind of strong case. So I don't know whether any of the other officers want to add anything onto that, but
thanks, Stuart. I think that's something we need to address as well in that letter when we submit the implementation plan, because they are real challenges, and clarity around the any additional funding revenue-wise from Welsh Government would be useful, and also clarity around exactly that Transport for Wales support is going to be central, I think, isn't it, as we move forward. So are there any comments from members? Darren, do you want to come in on that point?
Joel, yeah, just to add a quick comment as well, that we have been looking as officers at potential for additional resource subject to that funding becoming available, of course. So we've done some work around that. I think what we are concerned about, though, is the availability of resource in the marketplace, something I'm sure members will be familiar with. So we will obviously try and bring some additional resource in, which would be more in a kind of management overseeing role to pull things together. But given those timescales in front of you today, it's unlikely any additional resource like that will be available for the substantive part of the plan. So we will be relying probably on consultants to help us with some of this work, and I think we could all appreciate that's not perfect either. So that point being made by Stuart in terms of, at least if we get the funding in place, and you're talking about writing to Welsh Government, obviously to stress we need that confirmed, at least we've got that bit of it sorted out so that we can do the necessary appointments and progress those staff work as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Darren. Rhys?
Thanks, Darren. Yeah, I just want to know, are we asking for a delay in the date of submitting the implementation plan as a starter, as well as more additional funding for capacity in order to do something that is a bit more visionary rather than functional? I'm not sure I've got the full sense of what the letter will entail, so some clarification on that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Rhys. Stuart, do you want to provide some more detail?
Yeah, I think that, as I say, there's certainly that point where this 2025 has been a fixed point and everything else has moved along the way and it's got sort of bunched up. So I've real concerns about delivering anything meaningful in the timescale. I think it's right that we put together an implementation plan which sort of says, yes, we've got a commitment to deliver a regional transport plan. I think we I've got no choice but to put it initially forward on the timescales on there from Welsh Government, but I think I really think we need to have that sort of CJC voice to say, look, if we're to get something worthwhile and something that's worthy of the ambitions of the region, then we're going to have to have some more time to deliver it. So I think, as well as securing the sort of resources for the delivery, I think we need a longer timescale. It would also be helpful to have an indication of the likely funding. It seems a kind of a catch-22. We don't know how much funding is available, so we don't know how to set the delivery program. So we don't, we're in this sort of cycle. But I think, as well as understanding the level of funding from Welsh Government for delivery, I sort of, there's a feeling, I guess, amongst officers as well, that we don't necessarily just limit that to the funding available from Welsh Government, because if other funding from whatever it's badged as levelling up, the kind of, I guess, the post sort of Brexit funding of whatever that should be coming through to strengthen economies in the region, then it would be good to have a plan which is set out a stall in order for a strong bid case for that. So that's that's what I'd like to see anyway. But certainly, I don't think having something, if we're to deliver something within the timescales, it's I don't know what wording. It's not going to be much good. It'll be we don't have sufficient time, I don't think, to produce something that we should be producing.
Yeah. Thanks to it. I think the wider point here as well, of course, is that I don't think we're alone. I mean, every region across Wales is facing the same challenge in terms of the uncertainty and ambiguity around the funding envelope, both revenue and capital, and we're all facing the same challenge in terms of the timescales. So what might be useful, I'm happy to recommend as well that we write to other CJCs across Wales and the WLGA and engage with the WLGA transport spokesperson. Just to make sure that this is something that is being raised at the WLGA level as well with ministers, because I think it's we're not alone here. The challenges are the same across the piece of thing. But yeah, I agree with you, Rhys. Thank you for raising that. Right. Okay. So I think we've identified the key challenges and risks, and we've agreed in principle that we'll draft a letter to Welsh Government at the same time as the submission of the plan. If members are happy, what I'll do is ask officers to draft something then, and we can circulate that then for approval before we submit formally to the CJC and if that's acceptable. So just to formally ask, unless there are any further comments or queries, could members raise their electronic hands to show that you're in support of that approach and that you're in support of approving the implementation plan as set out? There we are. Everyone in agreement? Great. Thank you very much. So there's no objections and no abstentions. So that's approved. Thank you very much. So we move on then to item 4 on the agenda, which is the forward work programme set out on pages 17 and 18. It's here for noting. Stuart, do you want to add anything to this item? I'm just mindful, given the sort of uncertainty in the system, it feels for me as chair that we may need an additional meeting between now and February, depending how things develop, isn't it? That would be my gut feeling. Any further comments to it?
Yeah, I'd agree. I think, I mean, I would hope that the Welsh Government are receptive to sort of reviewing things, but I think straight when we've had a kind of an indication from them and that dialogue, then I think it would be worthwhile having another meeting. And because if they don't, we're going to have an awful lot to try and improve in a very short space of time. And but hopefully it'll be to have further discussion on a different timescale and for the development of the plan. Yeah,
great. So if members are happy with that, I suppose the call would be just to try and build in some flexibility from our point of view, isn't it? And if we can and if we need to reconvene to provide some direction or whatever, then we do that. So if members are happy with that, any further comments? Or everyone quite content? Yeah, I don't see any great objection. Okay, folks, if that's the case then, so just to show then if you're happy to note what's in front of you by raising your hands, and we'll keep an open mind in terms of the need for additional meetings. Great, thank you very much. Everyone in agreement. The only item is urgent items. Are there any items or are there any points that members would like to raise at this juncture? No? Content. There we are. Great, wonderful. Thank you very much for your time this morning. And as I say, apologies in the start for the technical issues. I'm sure they'll be resolved for future meetings. And thank you as well to officers from across the region who have worked in the background to get us to this stage. It's appreciated. And as I say, we look forward to having that draft maybe of wording so that we can get that agreement across the 4 councils. Great. Thank you very much. We'll speak soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hwyl, Talbot.
Ta-ra.
Hwyl fawr.